There are moments in life when you pause, look ahead, and realize you don't actually know where you're going. No clear map, no guarantee, no sign telling you, yes, this is the right way. And in those moments, most people freeze. They wait. They tell themselves they'll move once everything makes sense, once the fear disappears, once clarity finally arrives. But here's the truth we're rarely told. Clarity is not the starting point. It's the reward for movement. Think about how often you've delayed something important because you didn't feel ready. You didn't start because you didn't know how it would turn out. You didn't take the risk because the outcome wasn't certain. And so you waited. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into years. Not because you were incapable, but because you were waiting for a feeling that was never meant to come first. Life doesn't hand you clarity and then say, now go. Life says, go, and I'll show you as you move. Every meaningful path begins in uncertainty. No one starts a journey knowing every twist and turn. You don't see the full staircase. When you're standing at the bottom, you only see the first step. And that step doesn't come with reassurance. It comes with doubt, hesitation, and a quiet voice asking, what if this is wrong? But taking that step is what reveals the next one. Action creates information. Movement creates understanding. Stillness only creates more confusion. When nothing feels clear, it's easy to assume something is wrong with you. You start thinking you're behind, lost, or failing. But uncertainty isn't a sign you're off track. It's often a sign you're exactly where you need to be. It means you're stretching beyond what's familiar. It means you're no longer living on autopilot. Confusion shows up when you're standing between who you were and who you're becoming. And that space is uncomfortable, but it's also powerful. We've been conditioned to believe that confident people have everything figured out, that successful people knew from the beginning exactly what to do. But the truth is, most people who are doing meaningful work once stood exactly where you are now, unsure, afraid, and uncertain. The difference is, they didn't wait for clarity to rescue them. They moved with questions in their pockets and doubt in their minds. And somehow, step by step, things started to make sense. Clarity isn't a lightning strike. It's a slow reveal. It comes from trying, failing, adjusting, and trying again. You learn what works by doing what doesn't. You discover direction by walking through detours. And sometimes the wrong turn teaches you more than the right one ever could. But you only learn any of this by moving forward, not by standing still and overthinking. When you're stuck in your head, everything feels heavy, every option feels risky, every decision feels final. But movement changes that. Movement turns fear into feedback. It shifts your focus from imaginary outcomes to real experiences. Suddenly, you're not asking, what if this goes wrong? You're asking, what did I learn from this? And that shift changes everything. Small actions matter more than perfect plans. You don't need a 10-year vision. You don't need to know how it all ends. You just need to know what you can do today. One phone call, one page, one attempt, one honest effort. These small steps might feel insignificant, but they create momentum. And momentum has a way of pulling clarity toward you. The problem with waiting for clarity is that it keeps you trapped in the same place. Your environment doesn't change, your thoughts don't change, and eventually, your confidence starts to fade. You begin to doubt yourself not because you failed, but because you never gave yourself the chance to try. Action builds self-trust. Each time you show up despite uncertainty, you send yourself a message, I can handle this. And that belief becomes the foundation for everything else. There will be moments when you take a step and it doesn't work out. That doesn't mean you made the wrong choice. It means you gathered information. You learned something valuable. You eliminated one path so you can move closer to the right one. Life is not a straight line, it's a series of experiments. Some succeed, some fail. All of them teach. You don't need confidence to start. Confidence comes from starting. You don't need clarity to move. Clarity comes from moving. Waiting until you feel certain is like waiting for the storm to end before learning how to walk in the rain. The people who move forward are not braver than you. They've just learned that fear doesn't disappear before action. It fades during it. When everything feels unclear, remind yourself that uncertainty is not an enemy. It's an invitation to trust yourself enough to take the next step without knowing the full picture. An invitation to grow beyond the comfort of certainty. An invitation to discover who you become when you stop waiting and start moving. You are not lost. You are in motion. And motion, even slow and shaky motion, always leads somewhere. Take the step even if your hands are trembling. Take the step even if the path isn't fully visible. Take the step because clarity is already waiting for you on the other side of action. Keep going, clarity will meet you along the way. There comes a point in every journey where the confusion doesn't just visit, you start living in it. You wake up unsure, move through the day uncertain, and fall asleep wondering why everything feels so unsettled. And in those moments, the mind jumps to the same painful conclusion: something must be wrong with me. We're taught to associate confidence with progress and confusion with failure, so when clarity disappears, we assume we've made a mistake. But what if that feeling of being lost isn't a sign that you're failing? What if it's proof that you're growing? Growth rarely announces itself in comfortable ways. It doesn't feel like confidence at first. It feels like tension, like instability, like standing on ground that no longer feels solid beneath your feet. Confusion shows up when the old version of you no longer fits, but the new version hasn't fully formed yet. You're standing between identities, between chapters, between ways of thinking, and that in-between space can feel terrifying, but it's also sacred. It means you're evolving. Think back to any moment in your life when you truly changed. Not the small adjustments, but the deep shifts, the times when you outgrew a mindset, a relationship, a dream, or a belief about yourself. Those moments didn't come with certainty, they came with discomfort, with questions, with a sense that nothing felt stable anymore. That wasn't failure, it was transformation beginning to take shape. When you stay the same, life feels predictable. Even pain becomes familiar. But when you grow, familiarity disappears. And the mind, desperate for safety, labels that discomfort as danger. It whispers that you should go back, that you should stop, that you were better off before. But going back doesn't bring peace. It just brings familiarity. Growth demands that you tolerate confusion long enough for strength to develop. The mistake most people make is assuming they should feel clear while they're becoming someone new. But clarity belongs to the version of you who has already arrived, not the one who is in the process of becoming. When you're learning, stretching, and changing, confusion is part of the process. It's not evidence of weakness, it's evidence that you're doing something different. You don't question yourself when you're repeating the same patterns. You don't feel lost when you're staying small. Confusion enters when you step outside the limits you once accepted, when your standards rise, when your awareness deepens, when your old answers stop satisfying your new questions. That internal friction is not something to run from, it's something to listen to. There will be moments when you look around and feel behind, when others seem certain and steady while you feel uncertain and scattered. But remember this, you are not seeing their internal world. You're only seeing their highlights. Everyone who grows goes through a season where they don't recognize themselves, where they question their choices, where they wonder if they've lost their way. The difference is not that some people avoid confusion. The difference is that some people don't quit because of it. Confusion is often the mind catching up to the heart. Somewhere deep inside, you've already outgrown something. Your values have shifted. Your tolerance for what no longer aligns has decreased. But your habits, your environment, and your identity haven't adjusted yet. That lag creates discomfort. And that discomfort is a signal, not to stop, but to continue. You're not broken for feeling this way, you're human. Growth stretches you before it strengthens you. It asks you to sit with uncertainty without immediately resolving it, to keep moving without having every answer, to trust that the unease you feel is temporary, but the person you're becoming will be permanent. There's a quiet courage required to keep going when nothing feels solid. It takes strength to admit you don't know who you're becoming yet and still show up, to keep choosing forward motion even when confidence is missing, to resist the urge to retreat into old comfort just because it feels safer. That courage is not loud, it doesn't announce itself, but it changes everything. Confusion also teaches humility. It reminds you that growth isn't about control. It's about adaptability, about learning to respond instead of react, about letting go of the illusion that you need to have everything figured out to move forward. Some lessons can only be learned while you're unsure. Some wisdom only forms when you stop pretending to know. If you're feeling lost right now, ask yourself this: what am I outgrowing? What no longer fits the person I'm becoming? Often the confusion isn't about where you're going, it's about what you can no longer carry with you. Old beliefs, old fears, old expectations. Growth requires release before it allows clarity. And yes, there will be moments when the discomfort feels overwhelming, when you want to label this season as a mistake. But don't confuse difficulty with disaster. Just because something is hard doesn't mean it's wrong. Some paths are hard because they demand more from you, not because they lead nowhere. You are not failing because you don't feel certain. You are not weak because you feel unsure. You are not lost because you're questioning everything. You are growing. And growth feels messy before it feels meaningful. It feels unstable before it feels strong. It feels confusing before it feels clear. So don't rush to escape this season. Don't numb it, don't retreat from it. Let it shape you. Let it teach you. Let it strip away what no longer serves you. Because on the other side of this confusion is a version of you who understands themselves more deeply, stands more firmly, and moves with purpose earned through experience. This discomfort is not the end. It's the evidence that you're becoming more than you were. One of the hardest truths to accept when you're pushing forward is that progress doesn't always announce itself. There are seasons where you're doing everything you can, showing up day after day, putting in the effort, and still nothing seems to change. No visible results, no clear rewards, no moment where you can point and say, there it is. That's proof I'm moving forward. And in those moments, it's easy to believe the lie that nothing is happening. But the absence of visible results does not mean the absence of progress. We live in a world that celebrates outcomes, not process. We're taught to look for proof before we believe in ourselves. We want numbers, applause, validation, and milestones we can show to others. But real growth doesn't always operate on a visible timeline. Some of the most important work happens quietly beneath the surface, long before it ever shows up on the outside. Think about how much of life grows in silence. Seeds don't announce when they're taking root. Muscles don't grow while you're lifting the weight. They grow afterward in recovery. Character isn't built in the spotlight. It's formed in repetition and private choices, in moments when no one is watching. Progress often hides because it's preparing you for something bigger than you can see right now. When you're in the middle of a long effort, it's tempting to measure progress by comparison. You look around and see others moving faster, achieving sooner, getting recognition. Meanwhile, you feel stuck, like you're putting energy into something that isn't giving anything back. But comparison only shows you the surface of someone else's journey, never the full story. You don't see the years of invisible effort that came before their breakthrough. You don't see the nights of doubt, the quiet discipline, the moments they almost gave up. Progress is cumulative. It stacks quietly. Each small effort adds to the last, even when it doesn't feel like it matters. The problem is that our minds are impatient. We want change to be obvious and immediate, but Ife rarely works that way. Most meaningful progress happens slowly, then suddenly. And the suddenly only exists because of all the unseen work that came before it. There will be days when showing up feels pointless, when doing the right thing feels unrewarded, when the gap between effort and results feels too wide to keep crossing. Those are the days when progress matters most. Because on those days, you're not driven by motivation or excitement, you're driven by commitment. And commitment builds a strength that motivation never can. You don't always feel stronger when you're becoming stronger. You don't always feel wiser when you're learning. Growth often feels like struggle before it feels like progress. That's because your standards rise before your skills catch up. Your awareness deepens before your confidence does, and in that gap, everything feels heavy. But that weight is shaping you, even if you can't see it yet. It's important to remember that not all progress is external. Some of the most powerful changes happen internally. The way you respond to stress, the way you speak to yourself, the way you handle disappointment, the fact that you're still trying when quitting would be easier. These shifts don't come with trophies or applause, but they matter. They're signs that you're becoming more resilient, more grounded, more capable of handling what's ahead. There's also a kind of progress that only becomes obvious in hindsight. One day you'll look back and realize that something that once felt impossible now feels normal. That a version of you who once struggled would be amazed by what you can handle today. That's when you understand that progress was happening all along. You just couldn't see it while you were in it. The danger comes when you confuse slow progress with no progress. When you let frustration convince you that your effort is wasted. That's how people quit right before things start to change. Not because they lacked ability, but because they underestimated the power of consistency over time. They expected visible proof too soon. Progress isn't always loud. Sometimes it looks like showing up tired. Sometimes it looks like trying again after failing. Sometimes it looks like choosing patience over panic. These moments may not feel impressive, but they're building something solid. They're creating a foundation strong enough to support whatever success comes next. If you're in a season where nothing seems to be working, don't assume you're standing still. Ask yourself if you're learning, adapting, and staying committed. Ask yourself if you're stronger than you were before, even if life hasn't reflected it back to you yet. Progress doesn't move in straight lines, it moves in layers. There's a reason why breakthroughs often surprise us. They feel sudden, but they're never random. They're the result of countless small actions that finally align. But alignment only happens if you keep going long enough for it to occur. You can't skip the invisible phase, you have to live through it. So keep showing up even when the results are quiet. Keep trusting the process even when the evidence is thin. Keep doing the work even when no one is watching. Because the effort you're putting in right now is not disappearing. It's preparing you. What you're building may not be visible yet, but it's real and it's growing. There are days when your emotions feel so loud that they drown out everything else. Days when doubt, fear, exhaustion, or sadness take center stage and make it hard to remember why you started in the first place. In those moments, emotions feel permanent. They convince you that this is how it will always be, that the heaviness you feel now defines your future. But emotions, no matter how intense they are temporary visitors. They come, they stay for a while, and then they move on. Your purpose, on the other hand, runs much deeper than any feeling you experience in a single season. It's easy to make decisions based on how you feel in the moment. When you feel inspired, everything seems possible. When you feel discouraged, everything feels pointless. But if you let emotions dictate your direction, your life will always be at the mercy of temporary states. Feelings shift with sleep, stress, circumstances, and time. Purpose doesn't. Purpose stays even when your energy is low and your confidence is shaken. There will be moments when you wake up and don't feel like continuing. Not because you've lost your reason, but because you're tired. And tired emotions are excellent liars. They tell you that stopping will bring relief, that quitting will give you peace. But relief gained by abandoning your purpose is short-lived. The discomfort returns, often heavier than before, because deep down you know you walked away from something that mattered to you. Your purpose doesn't disappear just because you feel disconnected from it. There will be seasons when it feels distant, unclear, or silent. That doesn't mean it's gone. It means you're human. Even the most driven people experience emotional hours. Even the most passionate people lose motivation. The difference is that they don't interpret those moments as signs to quit. They see them as signs to rest, reflect, and continue. Emotions are meant to be felt, not followed blindly. Ignoring them isn't strength, but surrendering your future to them isn't wisdom either. You can acknowledge how you feel without letting it decide who you become. You can say this is hard without saying this is the end. That distinction matters more than you realize. When you started, you weren't driven by constant happiness. You were driven by meaning, by a sense that what you were doing mattered. That reason didn't vanish. It's just quieter right now, and quiet doesn't mean weak. Sometimes purpose whispers while emotions scream. Learning to listen to that whisper is part of growing stronger. Think about how many times you felt sure something was over, only to look back later and realize it was just a phase. You survived emotions you once thought would break you. You outgrew fears that once controlled you. That's proof that feelings change even when they feel overwhelming in the moment. If emotions were permanent, growth would be impossible. But you are still here, still moving, still becoming. Purpose gives direction when emotions fluctuate. It acts like a compass when the weather changes. You don't need to feel good to move forward. You need to remember why forward matters. On the days when motivation disappears, purpose becomes the reason you keep showing up anyway. It's what carries you through the boring, the difficult, and the uncertain. There's a quiet strength in staying committed when your heart feels heavy. It's AC to work towards something when you feel inspired. It's powerful to continue when you don't. Those moments build resilience. They teach you that you are capable of acting independently of how you feel. And that ability changes everything. You are not failing because you feel discouraged. You are not weak because you feel tired. You are not off track because you feel lost. These emotions are responses to effort, not evidence against it. They show that you're stretching yourself, investing energy, and caring deeply. And caring deeply will always come with emotional waves. If you wait until you feel confident to continue, you'll stay stuck longer than necessary. Confidence often comes after commitment, not before it. Purpose fuels commitment. And commitment over time steadies your emotions instead of the other way around. There will be days when the reason you started feels far away. On those days, remind yourself that you didn't begin this journey for comfort. You began it for growth, for meaning, for a future that required you to push beyond what felt easy. Temporary discomfort is not a reason to abandon a lasting vision. You don't need to fight your emotions. Let them pass through you. Feel them without giving them control. Let sadness be sadness. Let fear be fear. But don't let them rewrite your story. They are chapters, not the whole book. Your purpose was never meant to depend on how you feel on your worst day. It was meant to carry you through it. And if you keep honoring it, even when emotions tell you to stop, you'll eventually look back and realize that those feelings didn't define you. Your persistence did. This feeling will pass, but what you're building will remain. There will be days when motivation simply doesn't show up. No spark, no excitement, no inner voice cheering you on, just a heavy sense of resistance and the quiet thought that says, maybe not today. And if you've been waiting for motivation to carry you through every step of your journey, those days can feel like the end of the road. But they're not. They're the days when something more powerful than motivation has to take over. Motivation is emotional. It comes from inspiration, energy, and feeling good about what you're doing. And when it's there, everything feels easier. You move faster. You believe more strongly. But motivation is unreliable. It fades when things get hard, when progress slows, when life becomes overwhelming. If motivation were enough, no one would quit. But people don't quit because they lack desire. They quit because desire alone can't survive difficulty. This is where consistency steps in. Consistency doesn't ask how you feel. It doesn't wait for the perfect mood or the right moment. It's built on a decision made long before the emotions of the day arrive. It's the quiet agreement you make with yourself to keep showing up, even when the excitement is gone. Especially when the excitement is gone. Consistency isn't glamorous. It doesn't feel heroic. It feels ordinary, repetitive, sometimes even boring. But that's exactly why it works. While motivation burns bright and fast, consistency moves slowly and steadily. And over time, that steady movement goes farther than any burst of inspiration ever could. On the days when motivation disappears, consistency gives you structure. It tells you what to do when you don't know what to feel. It removes the need to negotiate with yourself. You don't ask, do I feel like it today? You ask, what's the next small thing I committed to doing? And then you do it. Most people overestimate what motivation can do and underestimate what consistency can build. They wait to feel ready before they act. But readiness is often a result of action, not a requirement for it. Consistency creates readiness by training your mind and body to show up regardless of mood. And that training compounds. When you act consistently, even in small ways, you build trust with yourself. You prove that you can rely on your own word. That trust becomes confidence. Not the loud kind that announces itself, but the quiet kind that knows you can handle discomfort. And that confidence doesn't disappear when motivation does. There will be days when consistency looks like doing less than you planned. When your energy is low and your best effort is simply showing up at all. That still counts. Consistency isn't about perfection. It's about continuity. It's about refusing to let one bad day turn into a pattern of quitting. The truth is, most success is built on unremarkable days. Days where nothing exciting happens. Days where progress feels minimal. But those days add up. They create momentum. They turn effort into habit. And habits carry you forward when emotions can't. Motivation asks for belief first. Consistency creates belief through action. One depends on feeling, the other depends on commitment. And commitment is what sustains you when doubt creeps in. You don't need to feel confident to be consistent. You don't need to feel inspired. You just need to decide that quitting is not an option, Todd. That decision, repeated often enough, changes the way you see yourself. You stop identifying as someone who starts and stops. You become someone who follows through. There's a certain freedom in consistency. It removes the pressure to feel a certain way. You no longer judge yourself for being unmotivated. You simply act anyway. And strangely enough, action often brings motivation back. But even when it doesn't, progress continues. Consistency also protects you from emotional extremes. When things are going well, it keeps you grounded. When things are going badly, it keeps you moving. It creates stability in an unstable emotional landscape. And that stability is what allows long-term growth to happen. Think about how much energy is wasted waiting for motivation. How many opportunities are delayed because you don't feel ready yet. Consistency reclaims that energy. It shifts the focus from feelings to actions, from excuses to effort, and that shift is powerful. Every time you show up without motivation, you strengthen a muscle most people never develop. The muscle of discipline, the muscle of self-respect, the muscle of perseverance. These muscles don't grow in moments of excitement, they grow in moments of resistance. You don't have to do everything, you just have to do something. One step, one effort, one moment of follow-through. That's enough to keep the chain unbroken. And once the chain exists, it becomes easier to continue than to stop. Motivation will return. It always does. But consistency is what ensures you're still on the path when it does. It keeps the door open. It keeps the progress alive. It keeps you in the game long enough for things to change. And motivation fails you, consistency won't. And if you keep choosing it day after day, even imperfectly, it will carry you further than motivation ever could. Show up anyway. Consistency will take you the rest of the way. There is a strange pattern that shows up again and again in almost every meaningful story of change. Right before things begin to shift, doubt becomes louder than ever. Not a soft passing uncertainty, but a deep, exhausting kind of doubt that makes you question everything, your choices, your ability, even your reason for trying in the first place. It feels personal, like a warning sign telling you to stop. But more often than not, that moment is not the end of the road. It's the edge of a breakthrough. Doubt has a way of convincing you that you're running out of time, that you've already missed your chance, that continuing will only waste more energy. It shows up when you're tired, when progress has been slow, when the results you hoped for haven't arrived yet. And because it feels so real, it's easy to assume it's telling the truth. But doubt is not a signal that you're failing. It's often a signal that you're close to something new. Think about how resistance works. It grows strongest when you're pushing against a boundary, when you're stretching beyond what's familiar, when you're stepping into a version of yourself that requires more courage than you've had to use before. Doubt appears because something inside you knows change is happening, and change threatens the comfort of the familiar, even when the familiar no longer serves you. Many people quit in this exact moment, not because they can't go on, but because doubt convinces them they shouldn't. They interpret discomfort as danger. They mistake exhaustion for evidence that the path is wrong. And so they step back, never realizing how close they were to seeing things shift. Breakthroughs rarely feel dramatic while they're forming. They don't come with music or clear signs. They build quietly underneath the surface while you're questioning yourself. And because you can't see them yet, doubt fills in the gaps with fear. It tells you that your effort has been pointless, that nothing will change. But doubt speaks the loudest when you are about to prove it wrong. Every skill you've ever developed came with a moment where you felt stuck. Every level you've ever reached required pushing through a phase where improvement felt invisible. That plateau, the space where effort stays high but results seem to stall, is where most people stop. But that plateau is also where growth is consolidating. It's where your mind and body are adjusting to a new standard. And right after that phase, progress often accelerates. Doubt doesn't mean you lack ability, it means you're being tested by the process. It's asking whether you'll trust what you've been building, even when you can't see the payoff yet. And that test isn't meant to break you, it's meant to strengthen your commitment. There's also something deeply human about doubting yourself right before success. Because success requires you to let go of old identities. It asks you to step into responsibility, visibility, and possibility. Doubt shows up as a defense mechanism trying to keep you safe by keeping you the same. But staying the same has a cost too, and it's often higher than the risk of moving forward. You might feel tempted to tell yourself, I'll just stop for now. But for now has a way of turning into forever. Not because you didn't care, but because doubt stole your momentum. That's why continuing in the face of doubt is one of the most powerful decisions you can make. It's a declaration that uncertainty will not decide your future. Breakthroughs don't always mean immediate success. Sometimes they show up as a shift in understanding, a new perspective, a moment where things start to click just enough to keep you going. Other times they arrive as external results that finally reflect the effort you've been putting in all along. But either way, they require you to stay present long enough for them to appear. It's important to remember that doubt thrives in isolation. It grows when you sit alone with your fears, replaying worst-case scenarios. But action disrupts doubt. Movement weakens it. Each step forward, no matter how small, challenges the story doubt is telling you. And over time, that story loses its power. You don't need to eliminate doubt to move forward, you just need to refuse to let it drive. Courage isn't the absence of doubt, it's the decision to keep going despite it. And that decision, repeated enough times, reshapes your identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who gives up when things get hard. You become someone who endures. When you look back on your journey, you won't remember the moments when everything felt easy. You'll remember the moments when you wanted to quit but didn't. Those are the moments that define you. Those are the moments that create the turning points in your story. Right now, if doubt is heavy, if quitting feels tempting, consider the possibility that this is not a sign to stop, but a sign to stay. That this resistance exists because something meaningful is close. That your persistence is being tested because it matters. You don't need certainty to continue. You just need courage for one more step, one more effort, one more day of believing that what you're building is real, even if it hasn't revealed itself yet. Don't turn back now. The breakthrough you're waiting for is closer than you think.